The first boy she ever kissed never woke up. That was the moment Anna Marie realized her power wasn't a gift, it was a curse. Welcome back, Panelheads. This is our Get to Know Hero edition here on Panelhead Comics, where we uncover the origins, chart the evolutions, and explore the hidden legacies of Marvel's greatest heroes. And if I bring up a detail you didn't know, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with another comic book fan, because that's how our Panelhead community keeps growing. Today, we're diving into Rogue, the Mississippi runaway who started as a villain, stole another hero's life, and somehow still clawed her way back into the light as one of X-Men's greatest heavy hitters. Rogue's real name is Anna Marie, raised in Caldecott County, Mississippi. Her mutation didn't show up in a battle. It hits in a moment that's supposed to be harmless. She kisses a boy named Cody Robbins, and everything shatters. Her latent powers explode to life. Anna suddenly absorbs Cody's memories, his feelings, and his very life force. He collapses into a coma he never wakes from. From that night on, Rogue is terrified of her own skin and starts covering up head to toe so she never does that to anyone again. In an early unused story that was supposed to be Miss Marvel 25, the boy Rogue kisses is actually called Freddy, not Cody. When Marvel later locked in her backstory, Cody Robbins became the canon name. So, if you ever see Freddy in the old comic story, that's basically an early draft of the same doomed first crush. Eventually, Rogue is taken in by Mystique and Destiny, who become her surrogate parents and pull her into the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Under their influence, she stops running from her powers and starts using them, for all the wrong reasons. Mystique sends Rogue on her biggest mission yet, an ambush on Carol Danvers, then still best known as Miss Marvel. On the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, Rogue grabs Carol and holds on too long. She doesn't just borrow Carol's powers, she permanently steals her strength, flight, and near invulnerability, and a huge chunk of Carol's mind. Then she throws Carol's unconscious body off the bridge and flies away. In Avengers Annual issue 10, we see the aftermath. Spider-Woman spots a body falling from the Golden Gate Bridge and dives right after it, and pulls Carol from the bay. At the hospital, Professor X discovers Carol's powers, and her memories have been ripped away by a young mutant named Rogue, and Carol is left barely knowing who she is. Rogue was originally supposed to debut in Miss Marvel 25, but the book was cancelled. That bridge fight sat in a drawer until it was finally printed in Marvel Superheroes Volume 2, Issue 11. By then, Rogue's first published appearance, the ones fans actually saw at the time, was actually Avengers Annual, Issue 10, which only shows the fallout, not the full battle. As the Carol echoes get louder in her mind, Rogue starts to fragment. Every time she uses her powers, more voices and more memories pile up, and she feels herself slipping. Desperate and scared she's losing who she is, she does the last thing Mystique expected. She goes to Professor Charles Xavier, alone, and begs for the X-Men for help. In Uncanny X-Men issue 171, Rogue officially joins the X-Men on probation. Immediately the team hates it. Storm, Wolverine, Nightcrawler, none of them want Mystique's enforcer sleeping down the hall. And when Carol Danvers, now the cosmic-powered binary, discovers Rogue is sleeping at the mansion, she is furious. That confrontation becomes one of the defining emotional beats of Rogue's early X-Men era. Rogue's evolution is one of Marvel's best villain-to-hero journeys. Before she ever wore an X on her chest, Rogue builds a serious villain resume, battling with the Avengers, clashing with Dazzler, and using Carol's stolen power set to steamroll heroes who had no idea what she can do. In ROM issue 31 through 32, Rogue and the Brotherhood cross paths with the Space Knight Rom and the monstrous hybrid creature. When Rogue tries to absorb Hybrid, she is overwhelmed by his twisted mixture of hatred and loneliness. And Rom's nobility cuts through the noise. It's one of the first times she genuinely questions the path Mystique has put her on. During the Australian Outback era, the X-Men passed through the mystical siege Perilous, a portal that judges your soul and spits you out into a new life. For Rogue, that leads to the Savage Land, where she ends up physically separated from the Carol persona that's been haunting her for years. In the Savage Land, Rogue has to survive alone in this prehistoric wilderness. While psychic monsters like Shadow King try to use her fractured mind against her, she also crosses paths with Magneto, and the two form a complicated bond mixed with attraction, ideology, and guilt. A connection that looks nothing like her early Brotherhood days. Then there's Gambit. Rogue and Gambit's romance is one of Marvel's longest-running slow burns. They started out as flirty teammates in the 90s, all banter, tension, and near misses. But the walls between them are very real, especially when Rogue can't safely touch. They hit some brutal lows too. When Rogue learns the full truth of Gambit's role in the mutant massacre, she's devastated. And in Uncanny X-Men issue 350, she leaves him stranded in Antarctica, walking away from him and the lies that got them there. But eventually they fought their way back to each other, literally. After years of history, they surprise everyone by getting married in X-Men Gold issue 30, then heading into space as newlyweds in Mr. and Mrs. X, and later starring in multiple Rogue and Gambit miniseries. Through all of this, Rogue goes from the dangerous liability to a teacher, an avenger, a veteran leader, trusted to anchor entire groups. Rogue's powers are simple to describe and brutal to live with. Through skin-to-skin contact, Rogue drains a person's memories, abilities, and very life force. For most of her history, it's involuntary and incredibly dangerous. Seconds can leave someone into a coma, longer can kill. Over time, Rogue learns to control her gifts. In later stories, she can choose when and how to absorb, sometimes touching without draining, or selectively taking what she needs. Rogue's been a cornerstone of the X-Men adaptation for decades. The X-Men, the animated series, gives us the iconic big personality Southern Rogue with the Miss Marvel flashbacks and endless flirting with Gambit. X-Men Evolution reimagines her as an emotionally guarded goth whose powers make her even more isolated, while Wolverine in the X-Men leans into her morally gray side, reflecting that she's been both a villain and a hero. In the Fox films, Rogue is played by Anna Paquin. In X-Men 2000, she's our point-of-view character in this version's X-Men mythos, running away after putting a boy into a coma with a kiss and being taken in by the X-Men, echoing Cody's fate on film. In X2 and X-Men The Last Stand, her arc revolves around the idea of a cure, and whether she should give up her powers just to be able to touch. In the Rogue cut of Future Days Past, we see her future role, even though she's mostly cut from the theatrical version. Rogue shows up in a ton of Marvel games, and almost every time she's built around a mix of close-up brawling and power theft. In X-Men vs. Street Fighter and Marvel vs. Capcom 2, she can dash in, steal a chunk of the opponent's power, and throw it back at them mid-match. And most recently, she's a part of the roster in Marvel Rivals, bringing that close-up brawler absorption power set into the team-based hero shooter format. From a runaway who put her first crush into a coma, to a woman who stole another hero's life, Rogue's story isn't about power. It's about learning how to live when your touch can break the people you love. So, panelists, which Rogue era hits you the hardest? The Brotherhood in early X-Men years haunted by Carol's voice? The 90s powerhouse leading teams and dancing around Gambit? Or the Rogue and Gambit era where they're finally trying to make it work as a married team? Drop your comments down below and tell me which version feels most like Rogue. Also, if I brought up a detail you didn't know, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with another comic book fan. Let's keep building this Panelhead community together. Other than that, Panelheads, we will see you again when we cover another one of our favorite comic book heroes from over the years.